kind of what you're looking for. Is you want to start moving it over the whole thing and let it get to the point where it'll blister. See? And then once it gets going, see? So if you're wondering what this is, I'm just telling you guys everything. So if I tell you something that seems really obvious, I'm not implying you're dumb. I'm just telling you to make sure we don't miss anything. This is a factory lead seam. So the roof is a piece that they would put together down here. This is where it's welded, and you can see it. This is actually a stick weld. Okay? It sounds crazy. They used to stick weld or acetylene weld, but a lot of times with factory stuff, they'd stick it together, stick weld it. So what you've got is a lap seam, stick weld over the top, lead load it, send it. Older cars or cars that were built in smaller production places tend to be acetylene welded. Stuff that was built in factories tends to be stick welded, right? Naked, and took all the lead stuff out of it. Like, holy shit, they're not super clean. They would just like bang those things. It was one of those things where like if the seam didn't fit or was too high, they just hammered the shit out of it and then just lead load it. So real common. So that's the weld seam that you're seeing there. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna get it blistering up, take it out, and we need it to be pretty clean. So this kind of movement that I'm doing here, you guys will want to do this while we're taking it out, because it's kind of the same movement you're going to use to put it in. Yeah? Who wants first? Basement, they go in the kitchen, they go different places, right? So when you cool it, what happens is the doors all close and everything goes back the way it's supposed to be. If you cool it slowly, really, really slowly, then all the carbon is like, oh shit, we got to go back to our rooms. And all the sponsors carefully back to its rooms, everybody goes in, the doors closed, everything's fine. So, if you heat it up regularly, right? If you heat something up here and something up here and something up here, what's happening is you're moving metal all in different areas and it tends to push things around, right? So, at that point, if you heat up a thing like this all the way across, all in one go, and then just let it normalize, and essentially you'll go back to the way it was. They talk about how normalizing, right? Like say you do a process or a heat treat process, or normalizing would be slowly bring the temperature and then slowly bring it back down. And what it does is it helps kind of release that stress within the metal, right? So this is what I was talking about. Principle is stuff ignites and combusts when it heats up quickly. So you won't burn the headliner as long as it just gets really, really hot, like it's sitting out in the summer sun, but it's really, really even, right? So like, I got my weld certs to aerospace for everything, and one of them is magnesium. Magnesium doesn't ignite when you heat it up and cool it down normally. It'll burn like a mother. There's a reason why there's a freaking $1,000 fire extinguisher over there. But yeah, but like I said, when people first learn to weld it, they're like, oh, it's gonna catch on fire. And I'm like, no, as long as it's even heat. All right, so this is a good example here. This is factory. This wasn't a repair, but see how there's a weld there? This is the seam, this isn't. I'm gonna guess somebody dropped something, hit something, poked a hole in it or something, and they were like, ah shit, put some lead in that one too. So you'll see stuff like that when you're doing factory pipe. So somebody was just like, ah fuck, looks like they welded up a little bit, so they probably ripped it or cracked it or something. Who hasn't had a chance to do this? Like a thin layer of tinning, and the tinning is more viscous, it'll adhere to the metal, and that'll give us our prep.
So it's kind of like a primer?
Kind of, yeah, like an epoxy primer.
Or
so there's two ways to do this. Some people like to put it on and then heat it. Some people like to heat it and then put it on like I'm doing. If you do it that way, it'll melt these acid brushes, so it'll have to be your personal preference. See how it turned chrome right there? See that? So see this muddy spot here? It'll turn chrome in a second when it gets hot.
Is that what color you want it?
Yes. See how it turned chrome?
Yep.
So I would say if you're doing this for the first time, smart thing is probably going to be just to coat it and then just heat it up like we did taking the lead out, kind of smooth out until it turns this chrome. And then when it starts to go chrome, it'll still be kind of muddy. See it's starting to go chrome there, but it's kind of muddy. That's when you take your brush and kind of clean that out.
And like tin and a soldering iron.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, if you have soldering experience, it's going to be exactly like tinning your soldering iron, only a big panel. And then you can see how this is all messy. Don't ever worry about it, but like I took the wheels off, made sure this was all bare metal when I did that. If you're working on something where it's not like this, make sure that you set stuff up because it's messy. There's no way around it really. Okay? So I'm just showing you guys this real quick and then I'm gonna let you guys do it. So see how it starts to do that and then I can turn it chrome like that? So what you're doing is you're basically gonna do like I just did and you're gonna apply it all the way from here and you're gonna get it where it looks like this. And then once it's on there, then you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna kind of heat it up and clean it like you're cleaning the skillet. See how pretty that is? Yeah, so it needs to look like that. It needs to look shiny, matte, silver. And this is important, which is why I said it's good to learn stuff without learning it off the internet. If you don't have tinning, it won't stick, okay? So it's important that it's bare metal when you start, like when you start tinning, there can't be like contaminants or dirt or shit in there. And then once you get going, wherever you're gonna put lead, your tinning has to go farther. So if I'm gonna put a lead seam from here to here, my tinning needs to go from here to here. Does that make sense? It's gotta go everywhere. You can't have any spots where there's no tinning. You don't want pinholes, you don't want anything. So if you need to get a wire brush, whatever you need to get in there, it all needs to look like that, yeah? Questions, concerns? All right, whoever wants to jump in.
The car that I learned how to do it on, that's the whole reason you call somebody in is
Because nobody knew how to do it. Yeah. Consistency kind of like coconut milk, right? Thick, but still viscous. That's pretty much all you need. Excuse me, you don't have to, but I use one of these spice grip that I have cut down and I use this just for that. One, it keeps me from burning the shit out of my hands, and two, that stuff's so expensive, I gotta use all of it. Like this stuff is clean, this stuff is still dirty. Now, I'm gonna have you guys all do this, but what I'm gonna do before I put this in is I'm gonna go in and heat it up, and I'm gonna do that Scotch-Brite, like I said, and scour it really well and get all of that little shit out of it. It's not gonna hurt anything, but if you have whole sections of it, then you're gonna have probably issues with it coming up. See how you guys are doing. How many of you guys have done this before? Just you? I wanna make sure you've got the baking soda on it. You can put it on hot, doesn't matter. Like I said, this neutralizes the acid that's in there from those vapors.
What kind of ratio did you throw in there, or just some?
I always say like to the consistency of like coconut milk, or maybe like half and half. Viscous but kind of thick still, right? So get it in there, and then fucking clean it. And when I say that, I mean like I'm pushing hard. So the main key with this is just make sure that you get the baking soda solution scrubbed into it everywhere. You know what I mean? Like make sure that you're like scooping the baking soda up from the bottom and like getting it in there and scrubbing it. Doesn't have to be a whole bunch. This is not critical. Honestly, you could do it without it. It just, like I said, keeps you from burning your paddles up. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my lead. And what you're gonna, I'm talking to you because I gotta put my respirator on. What you're gonna do is you're gonna get your soft flame and you're gonna move like this, okay? It's hard to heat up more than about, I don't know, 6 square inches. So I'm not gonna try and do the whole thing, but I'm gonna kind of work around like this, but I'm also gonna keep the end of this in the flame because what I want it to do is melt. And what it'll do is it'll turn, you'll see when I get in there, it'll turn to kind of like almost a pasty, chalky type consistency. And what you'll do is you'll kind of just smush it onto the metal. The idea is just principle based. You're trying to get as much of this on here built up as high as you can quickly, right? If you turn it to liquid and drop it on it, it's a little bit harder to control and it also tends to run off a whole bunch, right? So you can do that, and especially like if you're going in here, by all means, heat this up, and just fucking melt that shit in there, right? Where you're doing something like this, you're trying to, like I said, get it where it's like kind of chalky, just mush it into it, okay? Paddles don't exist right now. We're just getting lead on the seam, yeah? It's okay, but it's harder to build up. See what I mean? See how I'm kind of getting in and touching, and then getting away?
square foot house for 900,000.
Yeah.
You know, 4 acres and.
Takes a lot. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't look like a very difficult thing to start. Can't get it to fucking do it on it, you know what I mean? So, it takes practice to be able. How do you do that? Like I said, it has to be your own rhythm. Because that's how I learned, and I'm like, I'm sorry, this isn't the workshop for you. And I was like, it doesn't make any sense for you guys to take all the time and money, especially for people that fly in and stuff, to spend 4 hours doing something that you don't really know how to do, when I can blast through so much stuff that you can go home and practice. I always tell people you can learn how to do everything you need to know on an English wheel in about 8 hours. And then it'll take you about 10 years of doing it every day to get good at what I showed you. You know what I mean? So I try to, that's my vibe. I try to basically give you guys as much as you can, as much bang for your buck. So that way when you go home, you're not like, oh, well, I don't have that tool that he did, so I can't do that, or I don't know, you know, we didn't cover it. So you get to this point and you're basically just trying to bring this all up to temp. You got a little bit of stuff on this. So what you're looking for is to do it kind of more like in this area. Right? When it gets a little gobbledy, it's a little hard to work, but like I said, the more you do it, the easier it'll get. So what I'm doing here is just bringing everything up. And this is kind of a technique that I find is I do this kind of touch and pull like I'm doing here. And it's the same thing with everything. Getting it kind of up to temp is the swirly part. You don't want to get in a hurry because you'll melt it. You just put all that stuff on there. You want to get it where it's starting to do what I'm doing here. You can start to just smush it. You don't want it liquid. If it starts to get chrome, it's getting real hot, right? See that? So I'm just going for these cold parts. And as you work this, it'll start to, the whole panel will start to warm up a little bit. It's like welding aluminium. When you first start, it's cold. And then as you work it, the panel starts getting hot and it takes less amperage, right? So this is the kind of the movement that you're going. When this all lumpy and stuff like this, like I said, I kind of work it just like the high parts that we're talking about, right? But once it starts to move kind of like warm butter, then your technique is going to be touch, pull, and paddle, right? What I mean by that is touch, smear, get in and touch, smear, kind of maintenance heat. Make sense? I know we're learning something new, but please try not to heat it up too much, because if you dump it on the floor, it'll take us, even if I jump in and do it, it'll take us a couple minutes to get the lead back on there. So do your best to try and not get it too hot. So it's a little bit different. Yeah? But also when it's not super hot, you do kind of have to push a little bit. It doesn't just like spray. Now also when you're doing your paddle work, you can kind of go as far as you want with it. Some people will spend a lot of time trying to make it really clean with their paddles, right? Because it's just less work to take off. So it's really up to you. If you want to make it really, really nice and flat, you can hang out here and just work it. You can do what I'm doing right now and just kind of work it all in and then flatten it out more. But just like with filler, you need it higher than you want it to be. You want it sticking up, protruding. Because you're going to level it with your firework. Right? If you guys ever watch my videos and you're like, how does he keep his girly figure? It's because I do everything the hard way, because it's not smart. So, if you've done it correctly, it will feather. If you haven't, it won't, right? If it doesn't feather, don't keep going, it's bad. Right? Feathering usually means that it didn't get enough tinning on there. Like I said, we kind of did a thin pattern here. I'm not super worried about it because we're trying to do our class here. But when I do this, it basically levels everything completely flat, and it'll also kind of drag anything that's loose or chunky on the edge that didn't get tinned. It'll just take it right off. I tend to run it almost like a draw with like a 45-degree angle. It also pulls off chunks big enough that it doesn't go in your lungs, so you can do it without a respirator. Feather. Not feathered. Still not feathered. And this is what I was talking about. Don't cheat, right? Get till it's feathered. And this is what I was talking about. This is kind of, you want to make sure your tinning goes a long way. All right, so this isn't all the way there. This is, but I'm close to the height that I want. So feel that real quick. I'm gonna get my DA.